Good afternoon and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Glenorchy Planning Authority for the 11th of August 2025. I would like to acknowledge the Muranina people as traditional owners of this land. We recognise all Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the original owners and continuing custodians of the land and waters of this island look true to. We pay our respect to Aboriginal elders past and present, and we commit to working for a city that welcomes and respects all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. My name is Sue Hickey and I'm the Mayor of Glenorchy and Chair of this afternoon's Planning Authority meeting. Joining me this afternoon are my fellow authority members. So I have with me Deputy Mayor and Alderman Russell Yaxley, Alderman Stephen King, Alderman Shane Alderton, who's our proxy for today. And we also have a number of our council staff in attendance, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves as they go around.
So Lyndall Byrne, Coordinator of Planning Services.
Helen Ayres, Lead Statutory Planner.
Sylvia Jeffries, Planning Officer.
David Morley, Development Engineer. And Emilio Reali, the CEO.
Thank you. So moving on to item 1, the Planning Authority Declaration. The Glenorchy Planning Authority intends to act as a planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993. The Planning Authority has full power to make planning decisions on behalf of the Council. And the meeting procedures are as follows. Planning Officer presents assessment and recommendation and then answers any questions of the elected members. The chairperson invites the applicant and any interested parties to have their say by addressing the meeting. Speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. Please note at this stage a decision has not been made on the application. The chairperson may ask the planning officer to comment on any matters raised, and the planning authority discusses the application. Then for statutory planning applications, the planning authority decides the application and the senior statutory planner explains the appeal rights. And item 6 on that list is the planning scheme amendments. The strategic planner explains the decisions being made by the planning authority and the Tasmanian Planning Commission. And then for the legal requirements, when deciding an application, the authority is required by law to seek to further the sustainable development objectives of the Act, consider representations received during the notification period and make the decision by reference to the current planning scheme provisions. The meeting rules are quite simple. Please comply with any directions given by the chairperson and please respect other people's views and their right to have a say. Item 2 is apologies and leave of absence. The following apologies have been received by Alderman Josh Cockshott and Alderman Tim Marks. Item 3 is pecuniary interest. Do any of our members have a pecuniary interest today?
No.
No, thank you. So that will be nil. And item 4, do I have someone to move the minutes of the Glenorchy Authority meeting held on the 16th of June? And that be you, Alderman Nicholas? Yes, thank you. Seconded by Alderman King?
Yeah, I understand the 16th of June.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. So I'm going to put, does everyone consider those minutes? Yes, true record? Thank you. I'll put that motion. All those in favour?
Do I need to abstain? I wasn't present.
Doesn't need to abstain. No, you can vote.
Okay.
True
I've read abstain.
Thank you. Carried unanimously. And then for the 14th of July, only Alderman Yaxley was present, but we just need you to move that if that's okay. And that's from the 14th of July meeting. Thank you. Would you like to second it, Alderman King?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Any discussion required? No, then I'll put that motion too.
Only Mayor, that people need to know that Alderman actually was the only one there, so he has to move in that case, yeah.
Yes, but he's considered the mature.
Of those that are here, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm putting that item to the vote. All those in favour, raise your hands. Thank you. It's carried unanimously. Now, item 5 is the proposed use and development of 12 multiple dwellings and works in the road reserve residential at 168A Abbotsfield Road, Claremont. And so I'm now going to invite the relevant planning officer to present the proposal and you'll finish with a recommendation. I believe that's you, Sylvia, is it?
Yes, thank you. So I'll begin by showing the site on a map essentially. So the site is accessed from Abbotsfield Road, and it's highlighted in the slide on the left-hand side. It's located within the general residential zone, and so is the surrounding land as well. Can I have the next slide, please? So this shows the layout of the site. So the proposal is for 12 dwellings arranged in 2 rows. It also has a car park, a shared car park with 24 car parking spaces. And the application also involves works within the adjacent road reserve. Next slide, please. So this shows the slide looking back up. This shows the site looking back up onto Abbotsfield Road. So it's vacant at the moment. This shows the crossover from Abbotsfield Road. There's a paved road for about 20 metres, and the rest of it is a dirt road, which goes further about 50 metres down the side. Next slide, please. This again is looking up to Abbotsfield Road, and on the left-hand side, that's the subject site. So you can see a fence at the top end of the subject site, which then adjoins to the adjacent property, which contains 2 dwelling units. On the other side of the dirt road, you can see there's a building fence up at the moment. They're constructing units there at the moment, 34 units, but those units are accessed off Abbotsfield Road and not of the road reserve. The road reserve is a really, it's on a really old title, and so it's been there for a long time, and so it's still marked as a road reserve on the actual title plan. There's actually 2 lots. There's one of them that contains the dirt road, and then there's another 4-metre wide lot, I presume that's for road widening. That's between the subject land and the dirt road. Just one more slide. This again, this is looking down south towards the end of the dirt road. There's essentially the land to the north contains a little access strip that contains land that is to the west of the subject lot, and then there's another lot with a house on it, and then the dirt road keeps on going over Roseneath Creek, and there's one more house there, but as I understand it, they mostly use an access road. They don't use this dirt road for access to that house. And so the other slide just shows the construction activity that's going on at the moment. That probably comes into play partly with the with the performance criteria in regards to the front setback, which ordinarily is 4.5 metres. This property will have a 4-metre front setback, but because the adjacent units, they were assessed as an internal lot originally, so they haven't required the 4.5 metre setback. So that comes into play when looking at the streetscape, I suppose. Is there another slide? That just shows the discretion. There's a number of discretions that relate to this property. The most significant is the one that relates to density for multiple dwellings. This proposal proposes a much higher rate of density than what normally is required under the acceptable solution. Under the acceptable solution, usually it's 325 square metre per dwelling, which would only allow for 8 dwellings. The proposal is for 12 dwellings. In the performance criteria, there is an option A and an option B, and the proposal wouldn't have to comply with both of them. The option A, under that option, it would have to comply with the densities of the surrounding properties, which it clearly would not, so it can't satisfy that option. Under the option B, it's got to be for community and social housing, and it's also got to be within 400 metres of a bus stop. And I guess whether or not, it all comes down to it, whether or not this proposal provides a significant social and community benefit as to what, whether or not a higher density will be acceptable at that site. Can we go next slide, please? Then we have received 5 representations. The representation raised quite a lot of different concerns, but mostly they also relate to development standards and most particularly the density. They also mainly relate to the access on the access road that will go to the property, and also the issue of property values was raised, and a few other things to do with how much time there was with representations and so on. But it perhaps mainly comes down to the access and to the proposed density at this particular location. So I thought rather than me going through each one of the discretions, I might just see whether there are any questions and then respond to those. The recommendation for the proposal is a recommendation for approval, but just based on the assessment that you all would have seen within the report. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have questions from authority members? Alderman Alderton?
Thank you. Just a question in relation to the bus stop.
Yes.
It has to be a bus stop within 400 metres of the development.
Yes.
Is that taken in consideration 400 metres in distance from the start of the driveway to the Metro bus stop, or does that include the length of the driveway down to where the development's happening?
It has been going up the driveway, yes. You've probably found within your report there's actually, I don't have a picture to show where
familiar with the
how
bus
it's
stop.
being measured. It's about 350 metres, and it will be the way that people will be walking. Essentially, they will be walking up that, well, which is right now, but they will be paved, and they'll have to go along Abbotsfield Road and then back up the other
Because that
road.
gravel road is of considerable length. I was just wondering whether
Yeah.
you might have been pretty close in or making the 400 metre distance. It might have been very tight. If it was from the driveway, the start of the driveway at Abbotsfield Road to the nearest bus stop, you've got plenty of space.
It would have been quicker, but we did take into consideration that I'll have to walk the extra bit.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Alderton? No? Deputy?
Yes, thank you, Matthew. Just wondering, just regarding the inconsistencies with the advertised plans that was spoken about in the report.
Oh, yes.
Just with the advertising period, that obviously it was some crucial information that wasn't advertised as such. Is there any, I guess I want to make sure there's public transparency around that side of things. Is there any issues in terms of the corrected information that's now being supplied?
No, they haven't? Okay, sorry if I may. What happened with the plans was the applicant responded to an additional information request. That was to do with the frontage setback mainly and the private outdoor space. They did provide a new layout for the site, and they put in some plans with the shadow diagrams and showing the new setback and all of that.
Yeah.
And then I've asked them to make sure that all the plans are consistent, and then we received all the engineering drawings that were consistent with that.
Yeah.
But we didn't realise till I did the proper assessment that the applicant hasn't actually changed the site plan in accordance with that.
Yeah.
However, all the plans that we are deciding on today, they are the ones that were advertised. They haven't put in any new plans, but we'll be requesting that as part of the building permit application, that the site plans will be the same as the ones that are shown in the shadow diagrams and all the engineering drawings. And the slide that I was just showing today, that's the one that shows the proper layout. And we have made an assessment on the fact that this layout will now have a 4 metre front setback instead of a 4.5, but before that it was only 2 metres. So that pushed the units closer together so that there's less of a pathway in the middle to achieve more space. And because of that, the applicant was able to put in a compliant private outdoor space for each one of the units as well, because the private outdoor space then had the correct width that it had to have, and also it received more than 50% of sunlight for at least 3 hours of the
Yeah.
day on the shortest day of the year.
Okay, great.
But I am recommending a
That's fine. Yeah,
condition
right.
in relation to that, to ensure that when the plans come in for building, that we have advertised this layout, but we also had the other plans in it as well, in the whole set, that they hadn't updated.
Okay. And just regarding the distance, so the distance of the driveway, so we're talking I'm just considering about where the shared bins would be. And obviously, given that the report sort of states that the occupants will be older people, and single women, what's that distance? Because the bins would need to be collected from the road. Is that correct?
The distance that it will be paved,
Yeah.
it will be paved from where they're showing the car park there now. Do we have one that shows the first one of the map? Yeah. So where the car park is now will be on the southern boundary.
Yeah.
And the entry. So the driveway will have to be paved from that entry all the way up to Abbotsfield Road. Well, the part of it is already paved,
Yes.
but they will have to connect with that.
Yeah.
The other thing we've also done, we've put in quite strict conditions on how that's got to all match up with, there's a few existing crossovers that come off that existing driveway and how that is all going to be working, but the engineer can talk to you about that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I'm just more worried about, just wondering how far that is. So from the bin side through to the road, do we know that sort of distance?
They're not going on there. They're not going. I'm sorry. The waste management is going to be from Abbotsfield Road. The
Yes.
people will have to take the bins up to
Yes.
Abbotsfield Road because the waste truck is not going down the road.
So if I may interrupt, sorry,
Yeah.
it's around 45 metres
At 45.
from the
sorry.
property, the corner of the property boundary up to Abbotsfield Road.
Okay, and so they're the bigger bins as well?
Potentially,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. And just regarding, sorry, again, in terms of the pathway from the car park through to the properties themselves, is there any requirement regarding lighting in terms of being able to, because the car park is separate to where the dwellings are, and we're talking about elderly people and...
No, there's nothing under the planning scheme that requires lighting of that walkway because it's not part of the parking module.
Right. Okay. And like you mentioned, that the proposal doesn't meet the acceptable standard, obviously the 325 square metres, which is per resident, and it's 222.
Yes,
That's a lot less for the 12 dwellings. And I would say, I mean, is it fair to say that under this proposal, if there was 8, which is then meets the acceptable standard, that many of these performance criteria, I guess, would be acceptable in that sense? Is that
if there was 8, it will comply and
Yes.
would not have discretion
Yes.
on the density.
Yep.
It
Okay.
would be subject to the building designs whether the rest of the discretion should
Sure,
remain.
correct, yeah, absolutely, no, that's fine. And it talks about how we talked about there, about providing for significant social or community benefit, not whether it is a social or community housing, that's not what it's about. It asks to provide a significant social community benefit. So it has to meet one of those. So I guess do we have some understanding around what that looks like, the significant social community benefit? Has anyone considered that? Has anyone provided an explanation around that?
It is a real problem because there's not a lot of legislative understanding in terms of what a significant benefit is. We do have some understanding that we would require for people that do require social housing. So we would think it's a better social benefit if it was for social housing, I suppose, which it is. It's just a matter of whether it's significant or not, I suppose. The applicant has provided information that will be for people who on the Tasmanian Housing Register, and the applicants also provided some information to say that in terms of social housing, that there's a real gap in the smaller kind of housing types that might be designed for the elderly or single parent families and so on, because these units are quite small, not quite 60 square meters. So that there apparently was a bit of a shortage in that kind of housing type, but been relying on the applicant for that. So yes.
Okay, and my other question is, I guess the standards that we have in the plan and the zoning requirements, they are applicable for all applications, and I would suggest that it's irrelevant of who the applicant is. So for instance, if a private developer is having this same application and this same density issue, they're doing 12 lots in Austin's Ferry, would the same rules then apply to that developer as well?
Well, only if it was for social housing. Other than that, it wouldn't satisfy the second part of the performance criteria. Well, it depends on where they are, of course, but we do have an inner residential zone that generally, accommodates proposals
Agreed.
for
But this is not
higher densities, but generally speaking, it wouldn't be able to satisfy be unlikely to be able to satisfy the performance criteria unless it would have a significant social community benefit. And so we consider, unless it was for social housing, we probably would not consider such a high density.
That's all, thank you.
The Deputy Mayor's covered virtually everything that you could need to cover. My only comment is it more antisocial than social housing, putting everyone so close together? It does concern us, or me, I don't want to speak about other people, but we're talking very subjectively here as to we don't have any real guidelines on what's social or antisocial, do we? From what Sylvia just said.
If I might step in, so there's no case history around it. It's an undefined term under the planning scheme. So significant social and community benefit is undefined under the planning scheme.
Yep.
There's been no case history that I'm aware of in the tribunal with this issue being fully explored. I would suggest that we have to turn our minds at some point to the pros and cons of any development of this scale and start to look at what point do the tables turn and the community, social and community impacts outweigh the social and community benefits. This is where, with this application, the applicant has provided us the information stating that it is for a specific niche housing size and typology that there is a shortage of, but completely understand your comment that there are other potential impacts of the density that is proposed.
And I take on board deeply the Deputy Mayor's comments around social regard to private enterprise, but we are setting a standard now if we go ahead with this for social housing within the area of a tighter type, some might say a lesser quality, and again, I see the value of both overall. So
Yes, so there's definitely, we definitely do understand your concerns. So we have had to assess it based on the planning scheme, based on the information submitted. It is definitely, it's 50% over the density that we would otherwise consider. So it's definitely a significant density that we are discussing in this application. And it does perhaps lend people to thinking that they can apply for such densities on other sites as well. Each case should be assessed on its own merits, but you can understand that if people see it decided once, they may use that as an example.
exactly, each case should be looked at on its own merits, but once we set a standard, then we've set a standard, which I'm happy to do if it benefits people. And I'm happy to be first, not me personally, but us as a council to be first if it means something of value. It's just, it is subjective at this point, I know. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
That's a comment rather than a question, so apologise.
Thank you. Would now going to acknowledge members of the gallery noting that we have the attendance of representatives and applicants in attendance and invite them to address the meeting. The planning officer may respond to questions through the chair. So, Fraser Reid, the applicant, would you like to come forward, please?
Thank you very much. I just did want to spend some time talking about the community benefit issue that we're talking about. So, the way the planning scheme works, as you're aware, there's an acceptable solution and there's the performance criteria. Okay, just because you're relying on the performance criteria, that doesn't mean it's a lesser development. You need to consider it against those performance criteria to see whether that test is met. So that's the main thing. It's not like we're asking for something different than what the scheme allows. That is what the scheme allows. As Helen says, you're not setting a precedent. It's based on what are the specific characteristics of this site and do they meet the performance criteria? And there's plenty of case law about that. It's a case by case. So I did provide quite a detailed response to this issue in my response to council on the 12th of June. And I'll just touch on probably 5 or 6 of the points, which are really what I see as the community benefit of this project. So the operator would be Loretto Community Housing, and Cody is with us today, who's the CEO of Loretto. So I'll pass to him after me so you can sort of understand a little bit more about how it would operate. But it would be owned privately, and Loretto would lease it and manage it to people on the Housing Tasmania list, basically. Another key attribute of this proposal, which is different to a lot of other social housing, it is for modular construction. So the dwellings are already constructed and ready to be deployed on site. So subject to your approval, this thing could be mobilised on site within 6 weeks. So we hear a lot about the shortage of accommodation. This particular type of construction is ready and it can be deployed on site immediately. The state government has a lot of policy around affordable housing, social housing, and its affordable housing action plan and housing strategy. And one of the identified points in that is to provide for diverse construction methods and allow for prefabrication and modular homes, because it understands that we need to be adaptable to actually get people into houses efficiently. This is one of the construction methods which has been identified. So there are, in terms of like the density of occupation on this site, we're talking about 12 2-bedroom dwellings. The permitted density is for 8, as we know. So a typical dwelling on a 325 type density might be a 3-bedroom dwelling. So we're really talking about 8 by 3, 24 bedrooms, or 12 by 2, 24. So the same density of occupation. So it's not as though we're cramming a whole lot of people onto this site. It's a density equivalent to what you might expect with a normal density.
5 minutes, Meryl. 5 minutes.
36. No, we've only got 2 minutes.
That's right.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. And then really it's the type of accommodation that we know is what's in demand. So smaller dwellings for people who are downsizing, single parent families. There's a lot of documentation and it's called the missing middle, is how it's been described in many strategic documents around this issue. We know there's a lot of detached houses on the housing register. There's a lot of, there's some very small like bed sit accommodation. What there isn't is this missing middle type accommodation. So a lot about this project does align with the government strategy around providing for social housing. And then the last point I want to make just before I pass to Cody is there's a draft condition in your recommendation, condition 4, which requires that it's held, that it's not, it's held in a single title. I think Helen might have it there. Helen might have my email on
Are you happy
Friday.
for me to share your email?
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you. You'll hear from Cody that their ownership model doesn't quite work like that. They don't own all of their sites. Often they are privately owned. They might be sold to investors within the site. But what you can be sure about is that they are managed by that community housing provider. So condition on the permit, that's a requirement on the future use of the land, that it would have to be held and managed by a accredited housing provider. So what I've suggested there is that condition below, so an amendment to the condition that would remove the requirement for it to be held in a single title.
Are we supposed to read that?
So just to be clear, so condition 4 is that the dwelling must be retained in a single title, owned and operated by or on behalf of an approved housing provider, catering exclusively to those requiring housing under the Tasmanian Government Housing Register or its successors. So that's what the officers have proposed. And what Mr. Reid is asking for is to remove the requirement for it to be retained in single ownership on a single title. So his proposed condition says the dwelling must be managed by an approved housing provider, catering exclusively to those requiring housing under the Tasmanian Government Housing Register or its successor for the life of the use.
Does that mean that the rents are consistent across the board, as in set by the provider, or if somebody owns them individually, the rent's consistent, so one's not going to be different to the other, the way you've described that?
That would fall down to the management by Loretto, I would presume.
I think Cody can answer that for us in a minute, yeah.
But it would enable strata titling of the units so they can go into separate private ownership rather than being retained as a single entity.
Thank you. So the key point I'd probably conclude with is we all know that there's a shortage of housing for our most vulnerable people in the community. This is something tangible you can do today to actually help assist that, and that with this type of construction they can be deployed within a couple of months.
Fraser, can I just ask a question? I totally get all that. I just wanted to know what would be the benefit of subdividing later?
I don't think the intention is to subdivide, but strata titling would allow individual investors or, a number of different ownership within the site, but they would be managed. They'd be managed by Loretto as the recognised community housing provider. So Cody might talk a little bit more about how their ownership model works. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So have you finished?
Yes, I have.
Okay, thank you. Well, then we might call Cody up. Okay. Has anyone got any questions of Fraser before we sit down? No? Okay, thank you, Cody.
Thank you, everyone. I might just touch on a couple of questions quickly before I do a general spiel. With regards to the rent setting, as a community housing provider, although an investor may own the asset, the rent would be determined based on the Loretto community housing model. So everyone would pay a consistent 25% of their income plus the Commonwealth rental assistance. So it wouldn't change the ownership of the asset, doesn't change the rental calculation, just on that point. With regards to the strata title, it's a bit of a bigger question, really. So Loretto Community Housing, I'll do a bit of a background just for those that aren't familiar with our organisation. So we're a registered Tier 1 housing provider. We operate throughout Tasmania. We currently have about 3,100 homes throughout Tasmania that we manage for social or affordable housing. Now, of those homes, we don't own all of those assets. We couldn't own over 3,000 houses. So a vast majority of those are either owned by government or owned by individual landlords. So one particular program we have, we will lease a house from an individual. It could be a super fund or it could be an individual, it doesn't really matter. We'll lease that home and then we'll rent it as social housing. So in essence, the social housing tenant only deals with us. They don't know who owns the house because it's irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. However, we then pay the landlord a rental for that house. So that's how this development's really been arrived at. We're not always in the position to be able to acquire an asset outright. At this present moment in time, we don't have funding to be able to buy this asset. Otherwise, it would be an asset that we would just look to acquire. But as it presently stands, particularly with the time frame that this could be on the ground being delivered, we don't have a viable government program. So what we do have is this ability to be able to lease properties from private owners and then sublet it to a social housing tenant. So the way this would work with the stratering would allow the 12 units to be owned by 1 or 12 different individuals, yet the outcome's the same because we would be leasing all of the units in the site and then letting it out to tenants. So at the moment, our data shows us that there's just about 1,400 people who have selected Claremont for a 1 or 2 bedroom unit. So we know there is significant demand in that vicinity for these units. We're certainly not worried about meeting the occupancy of those units as a result, given how much demand there is in the Claremont vicinity. So basically, yeah, that strata titling, if that's not the case, then it makes it a lot harder for this to be a viable development because you're limited to that one person only who owns those 12 units. And that becomes challenging because we're just not in that position to buy this outright ourselves. So as it presently stands, we have about 300 homes, getting close to 300 that are under this particular model where we're leasing it as the lead tenant and then subletting it out to the social housing tenants. From a community aspect, I think most of that's already been touched on. There's a lot of people, over 5,000 on the wait list, 1,400 have said Claremont, therefore I think the social need is very much there. As a tier 1 housing provider, we're obviously overlaid with significant corporate governance in the way that we must conduct ourselves, and therefore with the selection of tenants for this particular complex, we would be ensuring that the mix of tenants that go into the complex are suitable to live in that higher density environment. This would not be our first medium to high density situation. We have apartments stacked on top of each other with elevators through to just single dwellings on their own. So from that perspective, it's down to the expertise of our tenancy team to make sure that the tenants that are selected are suitable to this higher density environment. I might pause there. I think I've touched on the key topics that I wanted to get across.
Yes, please.
Question regarding, so the higher density properties that you've had, are they zoned general residential?
Yes.
What councils are they?
Hobart City and two in Glenorchy actually.
So general residential?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, they were in Alunga Road was the primary one. 115 Alunga Road was a recent one that we just did.
So the density is 222.
I'd have to check.
Are we that?
Sorry, through you, Chair, I'd have to check that
Like as in,
specific
it's important to
application.
understand.
So what was that, Linda?
But we're just going to confirm the density on that site.
Would you like to ask the question, Norman?
Sure, yeah. So in regards to you managing these developments,
Yes.
what I do have a concern around is, have you had any other properties that have a restricted number of waste management facilities? For example, here you've got 4 bins for 12 properties, so that's 1 bin shared between 4 properties. Who is going to take accountability for that waste being disposed of appropriately and correctly on the curbside? Yeah, 240 is a pretty heavy bin. It's shared between 4 households. So do you oversee control of that and manage that to make sure the bins are collected and put out in the streets?
We oversee it if it gets escalated from the tenants at the site. So we don't have a daily presence on the site. So our tenancy officers will go out to the site, our maintenance officers will go out, but all of the units on the site are occupied as a co-environment. Therefore, we don't have a specific presence on a daily basis. So no, we would deal with the tenants and address any issues that would get raised in regards to bins or anything else. So often we might have issues with someone's parking in my park, or there's a storage container that someone else is using. So these are just common tenant matters that our tenancy officers would then just go out to work.
So you don't factor into your rentals somebody that goes around on a weekly basis and puts the 4 bins up on the street.
No. It's treated as an independent residential site where the tenants are responsible for those matters.
So, question, just logistically, we're talking 240, they're a big bin, like it's a large bin.
Yeah.
And we've got
Three.
four of them,
4 bins, 3.
and we've got to push them uphill or downhill 45 metres, and we're talking about elderly people to get to the road.
Yeah,
to
I
get
have
to
to
the
clarify
roadside.
the elderly comment.
Well,
I'm not across the.
Yeah, so it's saying in the report, it's saying the focus of the occupants would be elderly and single parents, I think, from memory. I can't exactly remember if it was mothers or not. So, but we're talking logistically how that works. I don't quite see how it works.
Yeah, look, I can't,
Yeah.
if we comment on elderly, it could be over 55, certainly from that
It's still a long way to be pushing a big bin.
Yeah, but depending on the physicality of the person, I agree.
Yeah, and no judgment on that either.
Yeah.
Okay, whilst we wait for the answer to your first question. Oh, do you want another one?
Yeah, so hypothetically,
Older individuals, right, okay.
hypothetically, if you were to scale back to 8 properties, would it still be a viable project?
Look, from a social housing perspective, we'll take any project. So, you know, the wait list is so large, I take advantage of whatever opportunities present themselves. We have to be very creative when it comes to solving the housing crisis. If I can take 12, I will take 12, because that means 12 people have come off the list. So the best outcome is the 12. The numbers I referred to before, the 1,400, they were just people that have said 1 or 2 bedrooms. So I specifically focused on that cohort. So there is a significant demand for those smaller units.
So Cody, given that you said some could be single parents, it could be more than 12 people.
Correct. Yeah. So the 1,400 is just the applications. People could be a lot more than that. Correct. Yeah. Sorry.
Can I just ask a question with the subdivision? The strata title.
Yes.
I understand there's one lot, and if it gets strata titled, are the people who buy the strata titles tied to having to be the same conditions as always going to remain in social housing?
That's my understanding. Yes, that we would be the
So
property
if I
manager.
was to take the risk of buying one, or you, it would be subject to the fact it remains as a social housing complex.
Yeah. So the investor would know going in that this is the arrangement from how the rent gets paid. So it's like the specialist disability. There are a lot of investors that know the parameters, the financial parameters, and they choose to invest in that. NRAS, to an extent, was a similar model where the investor knows this is what I'm going to get. This is very much the same model. These are the financials. As an investor, this is what you would get, knowing that the outcome is a social housing tenant that's in that property.
Okay, thank you. Linda, have we got the answer to the question?
Not yet, unfortunately. There's been quite a few applications on that site for different ranges of multiple dwellings. So I'm just having a quick look at the last one. I can't see if it's 115.
I might have got the number.
How long the road you're talking about?
Yeah. There's also you went on the Preston Lane one, were you?
Tiering road, 1 to 7 tiering.
Yeah, it might be that one.
I'll just say
There's a multi-story one that's on the corner of Alunga Road as well, but that's not 115, that's a different one.
No, that one's about 3
There's
along the
one
road.
under assessment
Yeah,
at
that
the
one,
moment.
really, it's
That's
the
one
one we've just finished in the last few months.
Yeah, that's
That would be a medium density on general res though.
There's about 16 units now.
Yeah, there is, yeah. And that's the car park underneath with the units on the top. Sorry?
Is that on the corner of Ferradale Road and
Yeah,
Alunga?
yes.
The car parking's external, it's not underneath it.
Underneath, you can drive underneath into the car park, yeah.
Okay.
And sorry, Deputy, your question was the size of the units?
Well, it's more, the size of units on the zoning, in the zoning.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to find out, the size of those units.
I'm not aware of this, so bear with me, I've not been here long enough to have been here before they started to be built, so I'm
Sorry, I'm not across all the
behind
details.
on
There's a
a little
lot of
bit on these
development.
questions.
Can we find a friend?
Love to. I can comment for you that certainly the condition that's proposed by council is similar to one that has been imposed by the Hobart City Council for a social housing development, social housing enterprise on Letitia Street. So 71A Letitia Street in North Hobart is a multi-storey social housing development, and the condition on that permit does also state that it must be retained in single ownership. So in that regard, I don't believe we're doing anything radical or different where there is a density concern.
So has anyone found that size?
I'm just looking up an application that's
Oh,
been
okay,
done.
thanks.
Yes, on the Letitia one, so that's one of ours as well.
Yep.
That's a Homes Tasmania site. Therefore, they are the sole owner of that site. So it's a different model from that perspective. We manage it on behalf of Homes Tasmania.
Sorry, Meg, can I
Yes,
assist with
please,
that one?
yes, that'd be helpful.
So the one, I think, that Katie's talking about is 1 to 7 Tearing Road, and that was 15 dwellings on a 2,200 square metre site, which is a density of 146.
Does that answer your question, or you're actually after the size of the units?
You said 146 square metres per unit or?
Density, the density is 146
Density.
square metres of site area. So
And what
the
was
two,
the zoning on
yeah.
that one?
general res.
Yeah, I suppose it's
No spacing between those.
Planning permit,
Sitting on top of each other, whatever it is, it comes down to how many we want to prepare to sit on the floor.
planning permit number 23-212.
Did you get the answer to your question? No.
So you have got the question right.
Oh, no.
Very valid question.
It's trouble, all the questions are valid, that's the problem.
Okay, so 1 to 7 tiering has a density of 1 per 180. I'm just about to bring up the map to see what the surrounding prevailing density is. So that 1 to 7 tiering looks like it was previously quite dense unit development that's been rebuilt.
Yeah,
Would that be
that's a
correct?
different, it's a Homes Tasmania one, yeah.
Yeah, so I would need to do more background research into that to find out whether the density's changed from what it was under the previous iteration of the development. So that's not an easy answer,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have any more questions for Cody? No? Thank you. So then we have a representative. Bernie, I'm sorry, I can't work out the spelling of your name. Is it Siegman?
Siegman, yes.
Siegman.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bernie Siegman, I live at 168 Abbotsfield Road, which is across the road from this development, and I will be affected by this development. I'm pleased to hear that there have been issues raised here and already answered that I was going to bring up. One of the things is that I understand that your planners cannot actually make a judgment or address the problem of, yes, there is the bin, but the bin have to go up a steep slope, Abbotsfield Road, up to Abbotsfield Road. We've got it at every fortnight, we've got 8 bins that have got to get stacked at Abbotsfield Road on a very narrow footpath. How's that going to work? Okay. The other thing is that the planners cannot make a judgment on what impact does this have on the flora and fauna. I've got some, and I've discussed with them, I've got some major eucalypt trees on getting into my property, and this particular proposal will basically remove them. And these trees, it cost me $5,000 a couple of years ago just to trim them up and make them safe. And this could be avoided by having a different road construction, a different location of it. But this particular development doesn't take care of this. Also, one of the problems that all our neighbours have addressed is that there is no turning circle for an ambulance, for a fire truck, for a Coles delivery van in this car park. Now, we're talking about the preferred demographic being single mums and elderly. Now, they will be ordering Coles trucks to deliver the food. There is no turning circle for this. How is this going to work? One of the things that I understand was discussed here before, where the minimum, where this particular plot could be strata titled. I'm not quite sure how this can be achieved with, maybe there is maybe you can put some sort of a condition on the title which says you buy this and you have to release it back to, if you do anything with it, because you can't be forced to do anything with it, you have to then rent it back, lease it back to Loretto or one of the housing commission. What if they say, no, we want a short-term accommodation there? This is what we intend to do. You guys may have a better answer, but these are the questions we would like to ask. Okay, other things is this particular development, I've seen mine sites, and this was one of the comments I made, I've seen mine sites better than this. This is a narrow snaking footpath. How's any trailer going to get near these pods to deliver a fridge? Deliver a bed? How's this going to happen? This is basically a set of containers on legs. There is no landscaping underneath, maybe just flattening out a little bit. There is no fencing underneath. It's a demountable slum that we're proposing here. I'm sorry to have a rough word here, but this is what it is. It doesn't even comply with any logical thought. Now, understand that, yes, we all agree we need housing for single mums and the elderly. We understand that, but this particular development, to get into the housing proposition, you have to go up to 8 steps to get into it. Now, I don't know whether a single mum with a stroller can actually manage this, carrying a toddler up the steps. There is no storage. Now, I don't know where they're going to store the stroller or the lawnmower. There's no lawns remote mower. Do they want a dog? No provisions for this at all. There's no fencing for this. This is a high density development, and I must say all the other developments of the high density nature, as we just briefly talked about up along the road, they have some storage. There is an underground car park where you can maybe lock up something that you bought. There is no provision here whatsoever. Now, the reduction in plot size for this is the reduction of the whole property, including the car park, divided up by 12. Now, if you take the car park away, the actual plot size that you actually have to move around in is much less. Where I am, the same developer is developing a 33-unit development just below us. Fantastic, absolutely great. I'm commending for this, which is proper roads. There is a pickup for the rubbish is proposed. There's level entry into garages, proper houses. Looks good. This thing here is. All I have to ask is, and ask myself, would I have my mum, my daughter, live there? Thanks for your attention.
Right,
Can we answer those questions now?
yes.
We found some information for you.
Definitely.
So at 79 to 89 Alunga Road, there was an approval for 23 dwellings across 3 levels, and the density on those came to 76.75 square metres per dwelling. So that was like an apartment development proposal.
So question around that, so, and it was zoned residential, general residential?
Yes.
So, and that's acceptable how?
In that similar situation, in the sense that that was subject to a discretion again, and the discretion was considered with the reduced density,
Yep.
and that was supported.
And it was a building that had already been there, or was it?
No, it was a new
development? Yep.
development. So it was vacant. There was previously multiple dwellings on that site. So this was approved back in the application was lodged in 2020. And so, yes, the assessment then was undertaken in a similar manner, that we had to look at whether there was adequate, significant social housing benefit on that site and its location in proximity to like a bus stop. So that was assessed, and amongst a number of other discretions, and that was granted.
In 2020?
Okay.
So around, November 2020.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so, yes, thank you.
So in regards to what Alderman Yaxley has just asked and what council's done in issuing discretion, has there been any identifiable issues come out of that development since we approved it and granted the discretion? Have we since been made aware of or identified any issues that have arisen after the event?
Well, like it doesn't look like there's quite a lot of information on the file. I have to go into that in more detail to see if we've, received any enforcement issues or complaints from property owners in respect to that one.
So it's something you can't answer at the moment, unfortunately.
Okay, questions finished, and we can move on to someone to move this recommendation, please. Please.
Only if we're comfortable, move. If we're not comfortable, we're not going to move. It's that simple.
Not for the purposes of discussion,
If we move it, then we have to
discuss it.
accept.
Doesn't mean you have to
No, we
approve
can
it.
vote against it. I'll move it for the point of discussion, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the point of discussion? Thank you, Alderman Alderton. So we have a mover and a seconder, and now we can talk about the matter.
So, obviously, there are a number of concerns with this. But at the same time, I recognise that being first is a good thing as well. I'm concerned over many years that I've been on this planning committee that we have rejected so many things like this in the past. Now, all of a sudden, we want to go forward with something like this. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing. I'll sum up later on. I'll leave it to my fellow aldermen to discuss.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I agree there are a number of concerns, and I also acknowledge that there is a desperate need for social housing. But I also like to acknowledge if we're going to deliver social housing, we need to get it right. And we don't just cram buildings together for the sake of cramming buildings together so people have a roof over their head. We want people to have a roof over their head where they're going to live in dignity, where they're going to have space to move. where they're going to have room to enjoy living in social housing. So there are a number of concerns that are with this development, and I would seriously like to see the developers maybe go back to the drawing board and come back with some more updated set of plans and maybe look at it from another angle again.
Would you like to add?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Yeah, I'm really concerned about the application, as you can probably understand from my questions. And we are absolutely in desperate need of social housing. There is no one in this room can question that at all. And I've certainly been an advocate of making sure that we've got good housing available and to do it as quickly as possible, because it's been neglected for far too long. And it's good to see in the past few years things have been trying to be fast tracked, but it's still got to meet standards. It just can't be it just can't be just pushed through because it might fix the short term, but it needs to make sure we're thinking of the long term as well. And there's the standards for the occupants, for a quality of living, a standard of a home that's comfortable and safe. So we need to be thinking of those sort of things. I guess in my capacity as a planning authority member, I need to make sure I'm separating the two hats really clearly. And how I view this is that the representations that have been made, some of the questions have been acceptably answered, which is great. Thank you for the team for doing that. But for mine, the density remains a really big issue. And while we've got a medium density example, I still find this to be an issue. We've got surrounding lots, 600 to 1,000 square metres, so it certainly doesn't meet A of 8.41, absolutely. So we've got to rely upon whether it is a significant social or community benefit. Now, how we look into that for me is the key issue. So defining what that is, a significant social and community benefit is obviously, like we've talked about, is very subjective. I believe that the question that we've got to come down to is, does it provide or does this add to the area? And it's got to be a significant add. I don't see it can be just having homes themselves as that's the significant part. I think it's got to be, what is it bringing? Because we're reducing the density, what else is it bringing apart from that? Is there a social area where in the complex, is there a social area? Is there a barbecue area where the residents can meet and socialise for that area, for that community? Is there a little playground? That for me is that this complex would then have a significant or a social element to it that could actually help justify what it's trying to intend here. I don't see it, I can't see that it is a significant community or social benefit. And it's really important that we make that, and it's got to be, if it's significant enough, it's got to be noticeable enough. It's got to be something that you can kind of go, yep, that is significant. That is, ticks the box significant. It's got to be crystal clear that it actually provides those, that side of things. So for mine is that it's still, the density is concerning, the driveway access is concerning, the bins is a concern that doesn't reach that. I'm not necessarily satisfied around the ability for that to happen. So there's a number of things. I think if this application came to us and it was 8 and it met the density, I think overall you could go, yes, we can, as a discretion, we can see this go through. But as 12, I can't see how this is, that I don't see that it meets the performance criteria for density. As much as we need to be providing good homes for those for social housing, and not to a lesser standard. And it's an inequity that we think, okay, we'll just give them something that will do, whereas we could give them something that they're proud of and they want to stay there and live there. So I'm obviously very, very much of the thought that it could be done better, and that the site seems to be overdeveloped for what it is intended for in that zoning area. So I'm not well, I don't think I'll be voting for the recommendation.
Everyone has a say? Yeah, well, I'm not going to be the most popular person in the room. I'm really torn on this because as a person who's championed social housing and affordable housing for nearly a decade, I have watched whilst the government has been unable to deliver anything, let alone things of quality. I don't understand where the lack of quality is. These will be fully insulated, meet all the modern building standards, etc., etc. They're not caravans. Admittedly, they're not brick and tile and they're, not substantial residents. But, Mr. Sigford, with your daughter, God, I hope she's never in social housing. But, there's so many social houses around here in Glenorchy, which are more in complexes, admittedly, that are very tiny, one bedroom, little kitchenette in a tiny lounge room that allows for a couch and a chair. So it's not like we're setting a new standard. I totally agree that it's a worry that there's no turning circle and that there's a rubbish bin issue. But we're talking about people. I would also like to know that perhaps ramps are considered to these houses for people who might have disabilities or impairments or may need prams, etc., or just walking frames. But my thing is that unless we start looking at innovative ways of housing people, whether they're social tenants or otherwise, like there's so many places around the world where a 60 square resident would be a palace. Now, I know Tasmania doesn't necessarily have to pave the way that way, but we have people at the moment, 5,094 applications, who are not just 5,094 people. They may have 2 or 3 kids. There's a well-known hotel here where on Sunday, whilst I was eating my lunch, I was watching all the single mums with their kids in this hotel in tiny little units. Coming back to the car park, not everyone will be able to afford a car, not everyone will be able to drive. As for the storage, there are no storage units up at some of the social housing blocks that I'm thinking of, nor are there any barbecue facilities. That's what community parks are for. Now, I would love world-class housing for every single person in Tasmania, but at some stage there has to be this shift to something that is better and safer and delivers more outcomes than, and even with the strata title, my first reaction was, whoa, no. And then it's, stop, let's think about this. Unless we can find some innovative, ethical ways for people to invest, maybe this is an option of the future. Maybe there's a way for people to say, I've got some superannuation money and I would like to know that it's, doing good. A bit like those government policies where you can, you get rent all paid for by the government, etc., and they'll clean your house and they'll do all the other things if anything goes wrong.
We're here as a planning authority.
Yes, I agree, but you have raised the fact that these are substandard buildings, and I am disputing the fact that they're substandard buildings.
I'm talking about the density.
Well, you also talked about the fact that they're low quality houses. I don't see anything that suggests that. But we're all entitled to our opinion. I do have concerns around the parking circle and and I feel also very sorry about the trees and all the work you've put in there. And I'm sure if I lived opposite, I'd have all the same concerns. But this, I don't think it's going to get up anyway. But what I'm saying, at some stage in the future, all councils, including ourselves, and we do need to look at smaller houses for more people, tighter blocks, just like it is accepted internationally. And that means less possessions, less all sorts of things. So I will be voting for it on the basis that I think we do need to turn that circle. But now that it's all been discussed, I'll put the vote to...
No.
No?
I have to close.
Oh, yes, you have to close it, sorry.
Are you finished?
I certainly am.
Thank you. Okay. I've listened to my fellow aldermen and the passion that's been spoken about this, and it's just a quick question, if I may, before I sum up. Can we put any imposition on this to have ramps of some sort rather than stairs, or some way to assist if there are single parents here?
It's actually not a matter for the planning.
It is, no, it's not, it's for the building
There'll
permit.
be something under the building regs. I believe there's something separate under the building regs that deals with social housing when it's in that category, but I'm not familiar enough to be confident with that.
We didn't really overcome the problem of the turning circles or, no, but that's a building thing as well, because this fits under the planning, yeah. So it's our planning hats at the moment, I get that. I get that. As much as I'd like to abstain from this because it's the easy way out, that I can't do. And like the Deputy Mayor, I recognise that this has its antisocial side about it. But like the Mayor said, and I would have put people in pods in Launceston to get someone out of the rain. So I understand that as well. But that's not what we're here to decide. We're here to decide whether this fits from a planning perspective, simply that and nothing else. It's not a matter of our opinions or our emotions or whatever. It comes down to, does this fit under the discretions that have been allocated to us at this time to deal with? Am I correct in that? That's my understanding. So, based on that with great difficulty, I'd approve it, but only because, again, the subjectiveness that you've put us, not you've put us under, that we put under to decide on whether this is suitable or not, based on the subjective nature of, is it socially acceptable? The planning, from a planning scheme point of view, just doesn't seem to fit the planning scheme from everything that I've experienced over the years, but nevertheless, here we are. So that probably meant I've just babbled on about nothing, but anyway.
So if I could just have a point of, clarity. I would not be supporting it if I did not believe the professional officers knew what they were talking about. So considering they say it meets certain criteria based on this, this and this, I have more confidence.
But they haven't necessarily.
Well, it is a recommendation.
Discretion.
Yeah, based on discretion, if we determine that the social implications that are acceptable to the people that live in there and around there, now that's what we're deciding basically.
Based on professional
that's all we've
officer
got.
advice.
And that hasn't been
No, they haven't given us that
That has been
advice.
demonstrated satisfactorily.
No. What we've been advised is that if we think it's socially acceptable, then we can move forward with it. So it comes down to the subjective nature of us determining as a planning authority, which is most unusual for a planning authority, to determine that the social obligations that we have to approve this or not approve it is what it comes down to.
Can I have clarity on this, Roland? Right, because I hear what you're saying, but that doesn't sound to fit a planning scheme either, that it's just on how we feel about it. Like, we've had professional officer advice, and it can meet the criteria based on all these things, and then it's up to the four of us.
What
There's a
we've
number
been
of
told
questions
is,
that weren't answered.
what we've been told is that the social implication, or sorry, what was that term again? The social
Significant social
Social
community benefits.
Community benefit.
benefits, yeah. If we determine there are significant social and community benefits, then it becomes acceptable. If we don't, then it becomes unacceptable. That is what is not normal.
It comes with a recommendation for approval.
The recommendation based on
Discretion.
the discretion of us accepting that social implication. That's the difficulty, this is probably one of the most difficult planning decisions I've ever had to be involved in, because of the nature. It's not about does 8 fit or 12 fit, or, it's green or black or whatever. It's, how many trees there are, whatever. It's about the social implications, is my understanding. If I tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm happy to be wrong.
Through you, Chair, it's the planning scheme words that we're relying upon are significant social and community benefit. It is a concept that is undefined and untested. So it comes down to whether we agree that there is a significant social and community benefit, or whether we don't see that this density is warranted through that significant social and community benefit.
So it comes down to whether we, as for planning...
And we can't measure it, can we? At this stage, we can't measure it.
We have no tribunal case history that we can rely upon to give us guidance at this stage.
Paul would like to speak.
Just through you, Chair, just to make a general comment. This is a discretionary application. The officers have made a recommendation. It's actually the role of the planning authority to make sure that we've exercised our discretion fairly and reasonably, but you do have a role to play in that. So you
It's
can,
appealable.
as all decisions are, but you can exercise your authority here to go either way. We merely put a recommendation to you.
Yes, which is what I was expressing. I felt that you put a recommendation based on that one discretion. Pretty much everything else fits into a round peg in a square hole, so to speak. But this particular one is more emotive than it is black and white.
Yes.
And if I'm wrong, please somebody tell me. Take me out the back, give me a smack in here. I don't care.
Out you go.
I believe you're right.
Okay, so then,
Well, I was going to reiterate that the role of the planning authority here is to be a double check.
Yes.
That we have exercised, we as in the planning officers have exercised our discretions fairly and reasonably. Now, if you don't think we have, then you can vote against it if you wish. But that decision is entirely yours, and
Yes.
this is what you were here for.
Which is what I think I was saying, pretty much, and it's not about disagreeing with the planning, the planner's suggestions. They've just put a recommendation to us based on, and again, the crux of it all is on this one discretion, a very emotive discretion in itself. So there you go. That's where we are. We've got to vote on it now.
so I shall put it to the vote. All those who approve, raise your hand. Thank you, it's not carried. Those against? Thank you, not carried. So would you like to go back to, anyone have to talk about this now?
Okay, so the decision, if I'm understanding this correctly, is a decision of refusal, which means that we will be notifying the applicant of that in the coming days. There will be a 14-day appeal period from the date of our decision, in which either the applicant or any representatives can appeal against our decision.
And just to clarify that, we need to confirm recommended
Grounds of
reasons.
refusal. So am I to understand from the discussion that the ground of refusal is failure to satisfy the density, the discretion under the density clause, which I can probably word more eloquently.
Don't you agree with gentlemen?
What's that, sorry?
Is the ground for refusal that you don't believe that it provides the significant social and community benefit as is required under?
From my point of view, the density,
Yes.
the social implications with that density are my concern.
Same here.
And
So
yeah,
the proposed density fails to
meet the social implications is from our
Provide.
perspective.
Yeah.
a significant social and community benefit
Significant being the key word.
as required by clause.
And again, I apologise, I don't want to speak without other people.
No, yeah.
4.1.
I desperately wanted to go ahead, but that's not the point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the proposed density fails to provide a significant social and community benefit as required by clause 8.4.1 P1 of the planning scheme. That's my understanding of it.
That's a good way to put it. Yes. Done well, thank you. And again, thank you for what you guys have brought to us. And it's not about you or the work you've done in any way, shape or form. It's not about Loretta or even the neighbours. It's about us having to make a decision based on the significant social implications, in my view.
Thank you.
Right, so move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 6 is proposed use and development subdivision 61 lots plus gardens at 15 Granby Street, Chibble. See you, good night. Right, where am I? Lost my notes. So, why is it not on this list?
I think that's all we finished by now.
Yeah, no, it's not listed.
Like workshop.
So item 6, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, the
It's
Korean.
not on the notes. So anyway, we'll go to item 6 and we'll invite the relevant planning officer to present the proposal.
Okay, thank you. So what we've got here is 15 Karambi, which is a property which essentially provides a missing link between Boondah and Branscombe Parades. The addressing is slightly...
Sorry, no, just that noise is, yeah.
Oh.
Thank you.
So what we've got up on the screen is we've got the whole of the site, which, as you can see, is a very large property which is substantially zoned landscape skyline conservation, and there is a small section of general residential to the east of the site. So what we have before us is an application to subdivide the general residential zoned portion of that site, leaving a balanced lot for the landscape skyline zone portion. The subdivision will be 61 lots. It will include a riparian rivulet pathway, and there will also be a larger council reserve which will be dual purpose for recreation and for stormwater detention. It's a fairly standard subdivision design. It does provide for a through road between Boondah and Branscombe, as I've said earlier, which provides a more direct connection between Chigwell and Claremont than is currently afforded through Claremont Link Road and all the windy traverse up to Branscombe Parade. Number of discretions, none of them are anything particularly noteworthy in the grander scheme of a subdivision of this nature. They're generally all of the lots achieve a reasonable level of amenity or potential amenity for future housing due to the size, shape, orientation and design, albeit that some of them technically don't meet the planning scheme. The waterway and coastal protection relates to the area around the creek that runs through the bottom of the property. The priority of vegetation, the same in the areas where the works and the disturbances occur. The flood-prone hazard area does go through the property generally, but all of the lots are capable of achieving an area which will be satisfactory for future residential development. Public and firefighting access is more to do with the bushfire prone areas code and how it's the management of the land to the west. So there's not a cul-de-sac turning head provided that's of sufficient size for a fire truck to turn, but it's an alternate solution which does meet performance criteria so that the trucks can turn safely. Again, the landslip hazard area, all of the lots are capable of being developed to clear of the landslip hazard area. We've received one representation. The main issues from the representation are largely to do with access to an adjoining property, whereby the connection of the road up to Branscombe Parade, there's concern that the grade changes and everything might impact access to the adjoining property to the north, whereby they can't traverse the road as easily to get to either side of the property because the property is bisected by the road. Otherwise, there's questions about how long it's been appropriately zoned for subdivision, which I think the report covers off on. It's been residentially zoned for a number of years. There's enough. The privacy and security again for adjoining properties. I think it's all fairly well covered by the planner's assessment. I have to confess that we had a consultant planner do the report for this one, so I'm not as familiar as I would like to be, but I will do my best. So is there anything that I can help with on this?
Your best is pretty good.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Alderman Alderson.
Yes, thank you. I have some questions just in regards to the proposed through road connecting up to Branscombe Road. Now, reading through the paperwork, there was proposals, suggestions. I think you've been in contact with Metro in regards to future bus routes going through that area, and obviously with the new subdivision. It's great to service that with public transport. However, my concerns around how you're going to sort of compress, restrict the road with your narrowing down of a single give-way lane to oncoming traffic, so to speak. Won't that design basically eliminate any opportunity of having public transport going through that space?
I might defer to our traffic engineer to answer that question if I may. In short, it shouldn't be a problem because of the design, but...
Through the chair. So the slow points will still allow a truck or bus to get through. It operates the same as having two cars next to each other, and one person who's driving along would have to give way to someone else if there's two cars coming in the same direction.
Have you modelled it on any examples of streets in Hobart where a public transport services use that type of system and road? Because I can't think of anywhere a bus has serviced a particular design like that, and you have to sort of give way to oncoming traffic or have a slow point where you need to progress through.
So Waterworks Road is an example. It's not a public transport route, but buses regularly go up there to get to Waterworks Reserve.
Right.
And that has slow points on there as well.
Okay.
Very similar to what is being proposed here.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay. So there's no members of the gallery, so we don't need to take care of that. So then, would someone like to move this one, please? Thank you, Deputy. A seconder, please. Thank you. I saw Alderman Alderton first.
That's quite all right, I'm not offended.
Okay.
I'll read him up afterwards.
Okay, so would you like to speak to it,
Yeah,
please, Deputy?
it's obviously subdividing 61 lots. It does seem to be it's quite a challenging space of land, and obviously quite a sizable subdivision. And I read through it all. I'm satisfied with the recommendations. Very well researched, very well developed, and does answer everything really well. So I'm happy to pursue it.
Thank you. Alderman Alderton.
Thank you. I'd just like to further comment on Alderman Yackley's comments. But look, I think we badly need space to build houses, so the homelessness of people have got somewhere to live. This presents a great opportunity, and the topography of the land is no different to other areas around Hobart that I've seen that have similar terrain, similar slopes, and developments have worked there perfectly okay. So I've had my question in regards to through roads satisfied, so I'm fully supportive of this.
Okay, Alderman King.
Thank you, Chair. I was mortified when people started building up the top of Sandy Bay and thought, how can they do so? Topography, steepness, people work it out. If they're going to build there, they build there. Thank you for such a detailed report. Well done.
Yeah, I guess my only concerns coming from the Hobart Council was always, why are we allowing people to build closer to fire-prone areas? Isn't that a moral culpability? But anyway, again, I'm prepared to bow to expertise stronger and better than mine. So if there's no other questions, would you like to discuss it, Deputy?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, in that case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Recommended? Yes, thank you. It's carried unanimously. Now to the senior statutory planner.
Okay, so again, with this application, we've had a representation, so the decision will be sent to the applicant and the representative in the coming couple of days, and the representative will have 14 days to appeal our decision, as will the applicant if they're unhappy with any of our conditions, and then they'll be able to start their detailed designs.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that brings the meeting to an end. So we'll close the meeting, the time being 4:59. Thank you very much for attending.